The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Kensington Palace as Prince William stood at his office window, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. The weight of the past few weeks had etched new lines around his eyes, and even his usually perfect posture seemed to sag under an invisible burden. Kate sat in the chair behind him, her fingers nervously smoothing the fabric of her dress as she watched her husband struggle with emotions he rarely allowed anyone to see. The phone call had come 3 weeks earlier, just after breakfast on what had started as an ordinary Tuesday. William had been reviewing his schedule for the day when his private secretary knocked and entered with an expression that immediately set both their hearts racing. The news was devastating in its simplicity. A family in Manchester had lost everything in a house fire, including their 7-year-old daughter, Emma, who had been William and Kate's pen pal through a children's charity program. Emma had been writing to them for over 2 years, her cheerful letters arriving monthly with drawings of her family, her pet hamster named Biscuit, and stories about school. Kate had personally responded to each letter, and William often added little notes in the margins. The young girl had been fighting a rare form of leukemia, but her letters were always filled with hope and joy that never failed to brighten their day. She had dreamed of meeting them someday, often writing about how she wanted to show them her collection of royal memorabilia and introduce them to Biscuit. The fire had been caused by an electrical fault in the early hours of the morning. Emma's parents, Sarah and Michael Thompson, had escaped with their lives, but Emma had been trapped in her upstairs bedroom. The firefighters had tried everything, but by the time they reached her, it was too late. The family had lost not only their beloved daughter, but also their home, their possessions, and their sense of security. Kate had been the one to break down first when they received the news. She had fled to their private quarters, where William found her 20 minutes later, clutching one of Emma's letters to her chest as tears streamed down her face. The letter was one Emma had sent just the week before, excitedly telling them about starting a new treatment that was showing promising results. She had drawn a picture of herself with a crown. Standing next to 2 figures she had labeled Prince William and Princess Kate, with a speech bubble saying, "We're going to beat this together." William had held his wife as she sobbed, feeling his own tears threatening to fall. They had both become deeply attached to Emma through her correspondence, and her death felt personal in a way that surprised them both. As members of the royal family, they were accustomed to maintaining emotional distance, but Emma had somehow broken through their defenses with her innocent charm and unwavering optimism. The funeral had been held the following week, a small private affair that the royal couple had desperately wanted to attend. However, protocol and security concerns had made it impossible. Instead, they had sent a beautiful arrangement of white roses and a personal letter to the family. Kate had spent hours writing and rewriting the message, wanting to express their genuine grief while offering whatever comfort words could provide. But words had felt inadequate in the face of such loss. Both William and Kate felt a crushing sense of helplessness, wishing they could do something more meaningful than send flowers and condolences. They had discussed various options with their staff: financial assistance for the family, help finding new housing, or establishing a scholarship in Emma's name. Each idea felt simultaneously too much and not enough. The breakthrough had come during a late-night conversation between the couple. They had been sitting in their private study, going through Emma's letters one more time, when Kate suddenly looked up with an idea forming in her eyes. She had noticed something in Emma's most recent letters that they had initially overlooked in their grief. Emma had mentioned several times that her parents were struggling with the medical bills and that they might have to sell their family car to pay for her treatments. The car, a modest sedan that Sarah's father had given them as a wedding gift, held enormous sentimental value for the family. Emma had written about how her grandfather had taught her to check the oil and how they planned to restore it together once she got better. The idea of the family having to part with this connection to their lost daughter and departed grandfather seemed unbearable. Kate's idea was simple, but profound. They would arrange to purchase a new car for the family, but not just any car. She wanted to find and restore the exact same model as the one they had lost to medical expenses, creating a tribute to Emma's memory while providing practical help to her grieving parents. It would be their way of honoring the little girl who had brought such joy into their lives through her letters. William had immediately embraced the idea, feeling a surge of purpose for the first time since receiving the devastating news. They began working secretly with their staff to locate a suitable vehicle and arrange for its restoration. The project became their private mission, something they could pour their grief and love into while creating something positive from their loss. The search had taken 2 weeks, with staff members discreetly contacting classic car dealers and restoration shops across the country. They finally found the perfect match, a 1998 Ford Focus, in the same color and model as the Thompson family's lost car. It was in rough condition, having been sitting in a barn for several years, but the restoration team assured them it could be brought back to pristine condition. The restoration process became a deeply personal journey for both William and Kate. They visited the workshop regularly, watching as skilled craftsmen carefully rebuilt every component. Kate had insisted on having Emma's name embroidered into the headrests, while William arranged for a custom stereo system to be installed with a collection of Emma's favorite songs, which they had learned about through her letters. As the restoration neared completion, both William and Kate found themselves fighting back tears every time they visited the workshop. The car was becoming more than just a gift. It was a physical manifestation of their love for Emma and their desire to help her family heal. Each perfectly restored detail seemed to carry the weight of their grief and their hope that this gesture might provide some small measure of comfort. The plan was to present the car to the Thompson family personally, but as the day approached, both William and Kate felt increasingly emotional. They had arranged to meet the family at a private location, away from media attention, where they could present the gift and finally express their condolences in person. The night before the meeting, neither of them had slept well, both wondering if they would be able to maintain their composure during such an emotionally charged encounter. Now, standing in his office with the meeting just hours away, William found himself questioning everything. Was this gesture appropriate? Would the family see it as genuine sympathy or as royal privilege trying to solve problems with money? Would they be able to handle seeing the parents of the little girl whose letters had meant so much to them? The uncertainty was almost overwhelming, and for the first time in years, William felt truly vulnerable. Kate rose from her chair and moved to stand beside her husband at the window. She gently placed her hand on his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. They had been through many challenges together, but this felt different. This was personal in a way that their public duties rarely were, and the emotional stakes felt impossibly high. "Are we doing the right thing?" William asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air between them, carrying the weight of their doubts and fears. Kate looked out at the gardens where Emma had dreamed of visiting someday and felt her own tears threatening to return. The car was waiting in the garage downstairs, polished to perfection and filled with the love and grief of two people who had been touched by a little girl's courage. In just a few hours, they would drive to meet the Thompson family, not as royals fulfilling an obligation, but as fellow human beings sharing in the profound sadness of loss and the fragile hope of healing. The drive to Manchester felt endless, despite the fact that William and Kate had made the journey many times before. This time was different. The restored car followed behind them in a transport trailer, while they sat in their official vehicle, both lost in their own thoughts. Kate clutched a small photo that Sarah Thompson had sent with one of Emma's letters. A picture of Emma sitting in their old car, grinning broadly with her arms spread wide as if embracing the whole world. The meeting location was a community center in a quiet suburb, chosen specifically to avoid media attention and provide privacy for what would undoubtedly be an emotional encounter. As their car pulled into the parking lot, Williams spotted Sarah and Michael Thompson standing near the entrance, their posture revealing their nervousness. Sarah was wearing a black dress that seemed too big for her frame, as if she had lost weight in the weeks since Emma's death. Michael stood slightly behind her, his hand protectively on her shoulder, his face bearing the hollow look of a man who had lost his reason for smiling. Kate felt her breath catch as she recognized them from the photos Emma had included in her letters. The little girl had often written about family outings and adventures, always describing her parents with such obvious love and admiration. Seeing them now, marked by grief and loss, made Emma's absence feel even more profound. The couple had requested this meeting after learning about William and Kate's gesture. They had initially been overwhelmed by the news that the royal couple wanted to present them with a restored car, unsure how to respond to such an unexpected act of kindness. Sarah had spent 3 days composing a letter to accept the meeting, wanting to express her gratitude while also sharing some of Emma's stories that she felt the royals should know. As William and Kate approached the building, they could see the transport trailer positioning itself in the parking lot. The restoration team had covered the car with a beautiful blue cloth, Emma's favorite color, which they had learned from her letters. The sight of the covered vehicle sent a fresh wave of emotion through both of them, and Kate had to pause for a moment to collect herself. Inside the community center, the meeting room had been prepared with simple chairs arranged in a circle. Fresh flowers adorned a small table in the center, white roses, the same type they had sent to Emma's funeral. The Thompson family's pastor was present to provide support, along with a grief counselor who specialized in family trauma. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation and sorrow, but also touched with something else. Hope, perhaps, or simply the human need to connect in the face of overwhelming loss. When Sarah Thompson first saw Kate, she began crying immediately. Not the polite tears of formal occasions, but the raw, uncontrolled sobs of a mother who had lost everything. Kate abandoned all protocol and rushed to embrace her, and for several minutes the two women simply held each other while their tears fell freely. Michael Thompson stood watching, his own composure finally cracking as he witnessed his wife finding comfort in the arms of someone who genuinely understood their loss. William found himself deeply moved by the scene, remembering his own mother's ability to connect with people in their darkest moments. He had always admired Diana's gift for genuine empathy, but seeing Kate display that same natural compassion filled him with pride and love for his wife. When Sarah finally pulled back from their embrace, her first words were about Emma's letters and how excited the little girl had been each time a response arrived from the palace. She would read them over and over, Sarah said through her tears. And she made me promise to keep them safe forever. She said they were her most precious possessions, even more important than her stuffed animals or her jewelry box. She told everyone who would listen that the prince and princess were her friends, and she was going to meet them someday. The simple honesty of these words hit both William and Kate like a physical blow. Emma had believed in their friendship with such pure faith, never doubting that their correspondence was genuine. In a world where their public interactions were often scripted and formal, Emma had seen through to something real and had responded with complete trust. Michael Thompson then shared the story of Emma's final weeks, when she had been too weak to write her own letters but had dictated them to her parents. She had been working on a special letter for William and Kate, one that would include photos from her birthday party and a drawing of the royal wedding that she had been practicing for months. The letter had been half finished when the fire happened, lost along with everything else the family owned. She was so excited about that letter, Michael said quietly. She had been planning it for weeks, wanting it to be perfect. She even asked me to help her spell magnificent because she wanted to tell you that your wedding was the most magnificent thing she had ever seen. She watched the video of it at least 100 times. Kate felt her heart breaking anew at these words. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small box, which she placed on the table between them. Inside was a bracelet that she had worn on her wedding day, not the famous sapphire and diamond piece that had belonged to Diana, but a simple silver charm bracelet that her sister Pippa had given her for luck. She had been planning to include it in a care package for Emma, but the fire had happened before she could send it. "Emma wrote to me about your wedding in one of her first letters," Kate said softly. "She said she wanted to be a princess someday. But not for the crown or the palace. She said she wanted to be a princess so she could help people feel better when they were sad. I think she understood what being royal really means better than most adults do." Sarah Thompson accepted the bracelet with trembling hands, understanding immediately the significance of the gesture. This wasn't charity or royal largesse. It was one mother sharing something precious with another mother in memory of a special little girl. The personal nature of the gift spoke to the genuine relationship that had developed through Emma's letters, proving that their daughter's belief in the friendship had been justified. As they talked, more stories emerged about Emma's personality and dreams. She had been saving money to visit London, keeping coins in a jar labeled Princess Fund that she had decorated with pictures of Buckingham Palace. She had taught herself to curtsy by watching YouTube videos, practicing in front of her bedroom mirror while wearing her mother's high heels. She had even written a list of questions she wanted to ask William and Kate when she met them, including whether they ever got tired of waving and if they really ate with golden spoons. The innocence and joy in these stories created a bittersweet atmosphere in the room. Everyone present could feel Emma's presence through her parents' words, as if the little girl's spirit was somehow participating in the gathering. Her enthusiasm for life, her curiosity about the world, and her genuine affection for people she had never met painted a picture of a remarkable child whose impact extended far beyond her short years. After an hour of sharing memories and tears, William suggested they move outside to see the restored car. The transition from the intimate conversation to the formal presentation felt jarring, but it was necessary. They had come together to honor Emma's memory, and the car represented their attempt to transform grief into something positive and lasting. The restoration team had positioned the vehicle perfectly, with the afternoon sun highlighting every carefully polished surface. As they approached the covered car, Sarah Thompson reached for her husband's hand, and together they prepared to see the gift that had been created in their daughter's memory. Kate and William flanked them on either side, all four adults united in their love for a little girl who was no longer with them, but whose influence had brought them together. The moment had arrived to reveal what lay beneath the blue cloth, and everyone present understood that this unveiling would mark a turning point in their shared grief. The car represented more than transportation or generosity. It was a symbol of connection, of love transcending loss, and of the power of one small girl's letters to touch the lives of people she had never met. The blue cloth fell away like morning mist, revealing something that made everyone present catch their breath simultaneously. The restored Ford Focus gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, but it was so much more than just a car. Every detail had been lovingly crafted to honor Emma's memory while providing comfort to her grieving parents. The exterior was perfect, the same deep blue color that Emma had described in her letters as the color of princess dreams. The paint job was flawless, better than when the car had first rolled off the production line 25 years earlier. Chrome trim sparkled like jewels, and new tires gave the vehicle a sense of readiness for adventures that Emma would never take. But it was the interior that truly told the story of love and remembrance. As Sarah Thompson opened the driver's door, she gasped and covered her mouth with her hands. The seats had been reupholstered in a warm cream leather, but it was the details that made her knees weak. Emma's name was indeed embroidered in elegant script on each headrest, But surrounding it were tiny embroidered versions of the drawings she had sent in her letters. A crown, a rainbow, a small hamster that was clearly meant to be Biscuit, and a heart with the words "Friends Forever" written in Emma's own handwriting, recreated by skilled craftsmen who had studied her letters. Michael Thompson walked slowly around to the passenger side, his weathered hands trailing along the car's surface as if he couldn't quite believe it was real. When he opened the passenger door, he discovered a small envelope on the seat with his name written on it in Kate's handwriting. Inside was a letter from both William and Kate, but also something unexpected: photocopies of every letter Emma had sent them, along with copies of their responses. They had kept everything, treasuring each piece of correspondence as much as the Thompson family had. The back seat held even more surprises. A custom console had been installed with a small compartment containing Emma's favorite candies, the same ones she had mentioned wanting to share with William and Kate when they met. Next to it was a small stuffed hamster, incredibly detailed and clearly meant to represent Biscuit. But perhaps most touching of all was a small digital photo frame programmed with pictures from Emma's letters, cycling through images of family celebrations, school events, and quiet moments at home. Kate had personally selected the music for the custom stereo system, choosing songs based on references in Emma's letters. The playlist included everything from Disney soundtracks to pop songs that Emma had mentioned hearing on the radio. The first song queued up was "A Whole New World" from Aladdin, which Emma had written about as her favorite because it reminded her of all the places she wanted to visit someday. As Sarah sat in the driver's seat, her hands gripping the steering wheel, she began to sob with an intensity that worried everyone present. But when she finally looked up, her face was transformed. For the first time since Emma's death, she was smiling through her tears. "She's here," Sarah whispered, looking around the interior of the car. "I can feel her here with us." Michael joined his wife in the car, sitting in the passenger seat and reaching over to take her hand. Together, they explored each thoughtful detail, discovering new touches that showed just how carefully William and Kate had studied Emma's letters. The glove compartment contained a small notebook bound in purple leather, Emma's favorite color for writing materials, along with a beautiful pen for Sarah to continue journaling, something Emma had encouraged her mother to do. The center console held another treasure, a small music box that played "Somewhere Out There," a song Emma had mentioned in one of her final letters. She had written about hearing it in a movie and thinking it perfectly described how she felt about her friendship with William and Kate, that even though they were far apart, they were looking at the same stars and thinking about each other. William found himself overwhelmed by the scene unfolding before him. Watching the Thompson family discover each carefully planned detail, seeing their grief transform into something approaching joy, he finally understood what his mother had meant when she talked about the privilege of being able to comfort people in their darkest hours. This wasn't about royal duty or charitable obligations. This was about human connection at its most fundamental level. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. As the family explored the car, Kate quietly handed Sarah a small key, different from the car keys. "There's one more thing," she said softly, leading them around to the back of the vehicle. The trunk, when opened, revealed a large wooden chest, beautifully crafted and engraved with Emma's name and dates. Inside the chest were dozens of letters, not just copies of Emma's correspondence with William and Kate, but letters from children all over the United Kingdom who had heard about Emma's story. Kate had quietly reached out through various children's charities, asking kids to write letters to Emma's parents, sharing their own stories of courage and hope. The response had been overwhelming. There were letters from children battling their own illnesses, kids who had lost parents or siblings, young people facing challenges that seemed insurmountable. But each letter carried a message of strength and resilience, inspired by Emma's example. Many included drawings, photos, and small gifts. Some offered friendship, Others shared wisdom that seemed far beyond the writer's years. "Emma touched so many lives through her letters to us," Kate explained, her own voice breaking with emotion. "We wanted her parents to know that her spirit is continuing to inspire other children. These kids heard about Emma's courage and her joy, and they wanted to share their own stories of hope." Among the letters was one that made Sarah Thompson break down completely. It was from a 9-year-old girl named Lucy, who was fighting the same type of leukemia that Emma had battled. Lucy had written, "Dear Emma's mom and dad, I never got to meet Emma, but I feel like she's my friend because the prince and princess told everyone about how brave she was. I'm scared sometimes about being sick, but when I think about Emma's letters, I remember that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared but writing letters anyway and making people happy even when you're sad. Thank you for sharing Emma with everyone. She's helping me be brave too." The power of these letters, the evidence of Emma's continuing impact on other children, created a shift in the atmosphere that everyone present could feel. What had begun as a gesture of sympathy and remembrance had become something larger, a celebration of one little girl's extraordinary ability to inspire courage and connection. Michael Thompson stood up slowly from examining the chest of letters, and for the first time since they had arrived, he smiled. Not the polite social smile of someone trying to be gracious, but a genuine expression of joy and wonder. "She would have loved this so much," he said, looking at William and Kate with eyes that were no longer hollow with grief, but bright with gratitude and something approaching happiness. "She would have especially loved that other kids are reading about her," Sarah added, clutching one of the letters to her chest. "She always said she wanted to be famous someday, but not for being sick. She wanted to be famous for making people happy. I think she got her wish." As the afternoon sun began to set, the group stood together beside the car that had become so much more than a gift. It was a monument to friendship, a testament to the power of written words, and a bridge between grief and healing. Emma's presence was palpable in every carefully chosen detail, in every letter from inspired children, and in the transformed faces of her parents. William and Kate had found their answer to the question that had plagued them for weeks. They had done the right thing, not because they were royals with resources and connections, but because they were human beings who had been touched by a special little girl's spirit and had found a way to honor her memory while helping her family begin to heal. The car would take the Thompson family on new journeys, but it would also carry Emma's memory forward, ensuring that her story of courage and joy would continue to inspire others. And in that continuation, in that ongoing impact, Emma's greatest dream had been realized. She had indeed become famous, not for her illness, but for her extraordinary ability to make people happy, even from beyond the grave. As they prepared to part ways, Sarah Thompson approached Kate one final time. "Emma was right," she said simply. "You really are her friends. Thank you for loving our daughter and for making sure her story continues." In that moment, standing beside a car filled with love and memories, 4 adults who had been strangers found themselves bound together by the eternal impact of one remarkable little girl who had believed in the power of friendship and the magic of written words.